start with some questions so we can start at 4:30 in case some are coming just for the 4:30 session. So here are some questions. Does having tubal ligation affect the body menstrual cycle like the pill? Not exactly like the pill. There are some disruptions because the body doesn't like being cut. And unfortunately, many women that have tubal ligations end up having to have a hysterectomy later on. I have very heavy clotted periods, but the Anna's wild yam cream can remedy that. Of course, you can't undo the tubal ligation, but you can strengthen what remains. So the Anna's wild yam cream can remedy that. What's the main reason for excessive body heat? Some people are naturally run a little bit hotter, but most women in menopausal age who are having the excessive body heat, it can be, well, it usually is a hormonal imbalance, and it's often called night sweats, the hot flushes, things like that. Also, I find when people are eating high wheat, high sugar, that's burning, that can burn at a high heat. Now, someone who's always cold, it doesn't mean start eating sugar and wheat and you'll get hotter. But it's often is linked to the hormones, and the Anna's wild yam can remedy that. How can someone who has a lack of serotonin from childhood get that serotonin from other sources? Can they come off medication? Serotonin is released from the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is activated by sunshine. So being outside. See, today, some of us had lunch outside. Just being outside on a sunny day, the ultraviolet rays from the sun are going through neurochemical pathways and hitting the pineal gland. So sunshine helps with the stimulation of the pineal gland because it's the pineal gland that makes serotonin. And also, the pineal gland releases serotonin between the hours of 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. In the summertime, do you have daylight saving? Yes, it's between 10 and 3 in the summertime. Also, exercise increases the blood flow to the pineal gland, and also the research is showing laughter. No wonder the proverb says, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones. And of course, I rubbed it off. But in the choice factor, I said happiness. Laughter is happiness. So, and also a plant-based diet. Meat is very high in an amino acid called methionine, and that methionine can block the action of the tryptophan. So I haven't given this presentation in detail on the pineal gland, but if you go to YouTube and put in Barbara O'Nihl sleep, you'll get that in detail. So basically when you're taking medication, it just totally stops the body making it. So there's got to be a time of implementing all the things that will stimulate and then easing off the medication. When taking probiotics, Slipperyelm, digestive enzymes, which order do you take them in? Well, the probiotics should be taken 3/4 of an hour before breakfast. Slipperyelm is mostly taken if someone has irritation and it's taken just before the meal. The digestive enzymes would be taken if someone had pancreatic problems, and that also is taken just before the meal. How do you get rid of genital herpes? Genital herpes can be knocked, if ever any symptoms arise, by taking high doses of vitamin C. But when you take high doses of vitamin C, make sure you get the whole C. So when you buy ascorbic acid, make sure it has ascorbic acid with bioflavonoids. So that can knock it if it comes. Unfortunately, if someone has the herpes virus, they have it for life. But if they give their body the right conditions, there will be very few breakouts. And if there is, then use the high doses of vitamin C. Curvature of the spine. What can be done for the curvature of the spine? I suggest if someone has that to go and visit a physiotherapist and get a series of stretches and exercises that can little by little bring that back, because that It depends how advanced it is, but it's certainly, you can give it the best you've got. Graves' disease, can it be reversed? Yes, it can. Graves' disease is hyperactive thyroid gland, so the thyroid gland is running too fast. So how do you reverse Graves' disease? The Anna's wild yam cream, because high estrogen, the hormonal imbalance can oppose thyroid function and cause under and overactive thyroid. Also, the main food for the thyroid gland is iodine, and I think I mentioned earlier in the week you can buy Lugel's solution, iodine from the chemist. You put a drop on your skin and it will make a brown smudge. And then you just observe how long it stays there. If it's gone in an hour, your iodine's low. Dr. David Brownstein has written a book, Iodine, Why You Need It and Why You Can't Live Without It. And that book shows the importance of iodine, and it shows under and overactive thyroid gland can be an iodine deficiency. I suffer from severe social anxiety as a result of traumatic childhood. How do I overcome this? And also on medication. I have met some people who've been through severe childhood trauma. One girl was sexually abused sometimes every night for 11 years of her childhood. Started at 3 and it finished when she was 14. You know, she found freedom through forgiveness. She forgave her abuser, who was her father. She wrote him a letter and she said, I love you, I forgive you, and I never want to see you again. That's very powerful. That's incredibly powerful. Now, there might be times in a person's life where different things come along and trigger a response or a memory of what happened. That's why I love knowing about the two bosses. It's your feelings that will challenge you. And when the feelings come up, the frontal lobe can come in and say, you're fine, you're all right, you're forgiven, God loves you, and you're moving on. Now, that if a person's in the habit of stressing, panic attacks, they can get out of that. And that might sound hard to say that it's in a habit, but it actually is. But I'm not saying the person chose to go into that habit, no way. But you can rewire. It is not easy at first. And that's why one girl, I said to her, start laughing as soon as it comes. Start drinking water, go for a run, do everything it takes. And I know you guys can't identify with this, but if you've had a baby and you've been through labour, the contractions come to an absolute peak and you just think you can't take it, then it eases again. You've just got to get through that peak. I had quite a few home births, and you can. And it's the same with a panic attack. You'll find it, and the anxiety, it'll get to a peak and you just got to ride it. You've got to say to yourself, you're right, you're right, you're right, more water, run around the house 3 times and it'll ease. And remember, practice makes perfect and practice makes permanent. And once you start conquering the panic attacks, the anxiety, you can start easing off the medication. But you can't just stop the medication. You've got to implement all the other things. Lots of water, nourishing food, go to bed early, exercise. What is your view on raw food? I eat 1 or 2 a day. I personally aim for 50 raw, 50 cooked in my diet. There are some times when there might be raw food, they're more raw. There might be some when there's more cooked. I find people with irritation of the gut, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel. I find that the raw food is a little irritating, can be irritating on that. So you're the doctor there. Raw food contains what cooked doesn't, and cooked contains what raw doesn't, because cooked actually helps to break down the food to make it easier to digest. So I think we should all be eating a bit of both. My sister's been diagnosed with Parkinson's. She's living healthy. She's 64 years of age. What can I do? We sell a book in our bookshelf, and it's called Stop Alzheimer's Now by Dr. Bruce Fife. And it's not just about Alzheimer's, it's about autism, there's another one on that, but it's about all adult neurodegeneration, so Parkinson's, Huntington's chorea, Alzheimer's, also multiple sclerosis. And he shows in there the importance of eating a high fibre diet, generous proteins and good fats. He suggests meat, I suggest legumes, nuts and seeds, and supplementing with coconut oil. Coconut oil breaks down in the liver to ketones, and ketones are neurohealers. They're neuroprotective. And that's where the basic, I don't know if you've heard of the ketogenic diet. That's the ketogenic diet. It can heal. So that's what I would look at. If I had Parkinson's, that's what I would do. I would investigate that book. Stop Alzheimer's Now, and it's by Dr. Bruce Fife, F-I-F-E. You talk of being in your bed by 9, as your body needs rest to repair, etc. What if you're a night person or you work night shifts? If you work night shifts, someone has to work night shift. If you work night shifts, my suggestion is that you exercise in the day. Again, there's a lecture I have on sleep where I go into detail in this one. And you try and get another job. I know someone has to work night duty, but the research shows that people who are on night duties for a long period of time, you know, their brains and their bodies do deteriorate quicker because it's between 9 and 2 that your batteries are recharging. Now, I married a night owl. In fact, when I married Michael, he used to put his children to bed and then go to the office till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And when I married him, at 8:30 I'd say, I have claims, you're mine now. That every 2 weeks he'd say, I just got to do it, I'm behind, no one rings me at midnight. Well, he's discovered that no one rings you at 5 o'clock in the morning either. So he's not a night owl anymore. And I never nagged because it never does any good. But he discovered that if he worked till midnight and then went to bed, he'd be wiped out the next day. But if he goes to bed early and gets up early and does that extra work in the office, you know, he's fine through the day. So you can change that. Just having, oh, that's it. Done. And it's past. Our lecture, our 4:30 lecture this afternoon is how you can prevent depression and how you can even conquer depression. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to begin with showing you some of the basic causes of depression. You see, depression is not a cause, depression is an effect. So the next question is, where's my why? Why depression? Well, the medical definition of depression is a chemical imbalance in the brain. So what's my next question? What has caused the imbalance? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a list of all the things that can cause an imbalance in the brain. So an imbalance in the brain can be caused by too many highs. So let's have a look at what causes a high. Sugar causes a high. Hybridized wheat causes a high. Caffeine causes a high. Alcohol causes a high, drugs cause a high, tobacco causes a high, and MSG causes a high. It's what's considered an excitotoxin. It excites the nerve cells. All of those cause highs, but they are transitory highs. And what a transitory high means, it does not last. It's a brief high. It's a delusive high. And all of those highs come with corresponding lows. And that's why the book's called Sugar Blues. That's why the book's called Caffeine Blues. And we'll have another book, and it's called Grain Brain by Dr. David Pertmuller, and he's a neuroscientist, and he shows how wheat is affecting the way our brain functions. What's a hangover if it's not the body basically saying, don't do this to me again? Drugs. How many young people go into criminal activities, even prostitution, just to feed their drug habit? Tobacco. Tobacco is one of the hardest things to come off. We had a lady come and do our health program, and she was coming off marijuana and heroin and alcohol and caffeine, And she said, don't take the cigarettes away from me. I'm already giving up a whole lot of stuff. I said, well, we're not Starlick 13. I can't tell you what to do, but you cannot smoke on the property. You'll have to go off the property, and it's a long walk. And we had a lot of rain. You can imagine trying to... So she actually didn't end up smoking a lot of cigarettes that week. I think she averaged about 2 a day, and at the end of the week she said, I feel so much better that I think I'm going to stop that. And I said to her, it's like this, if you give up everything, we can actually do a lot to help your body get quite better. But if you only give half, we can only get you half better. Can you see that? It's actually easier to stop everything. And it is one of the hardest. But we find that our health program, where the guests do 2 days juices, they have a steam sauna at the end of every day. There are herbs that I give them that nourish the nerves. It's one of the easiest ways I know to stop smoking. In fact, at the end of one program, a German woman, she punched the table with her fist and said, why didn't I suffer? Oh, I said, I think it was the steams, and I thought she was going to roast me for something. But that's what I find. When people come with patches, I say to them, you will not need the patch. You better to stop the patch because there's still a bit of nicotine going in there. Better to totally stop it, because the steam baths, you're sweating it out. And when you have a steam bath in a detox, up to 70% of body's waste can come out of your skin. That's pretty impressive. So that's what the detox does. It puts your body through this massive detox, so you're throwing off a lot of waste. But I find tobacco one is a very difficult one to give up. MSG, the damage done from MSG, the damage to the nerve cells is definitely a low. Now let me just define that again. These highs are brief and the lows are very long. And when someone's in a low, what could that be considered? Depression. So we're looking at what causes the chemical imbalance in the brain. What also causes a chemical imbalance in the brain is lack. So lack of oxygen. Our brain cells have energy cycles in them just like every other cell. And every cell that has oxygen has 18 times more energy. So if a person doesn't have enough oxygen, and when someone smokes cigarettes, they're not getting a lot of oxygen, then their brain's not getting enough energy and it is not running that well. And one of the causes of lack of oxygen is lack of exercise. Dr. Neil Nedley, in his book Depression: A Way Out, he says that if he has a very depressed, bipolar, schizophrenic patient, he puts them on 7 hours of exercise a day. He says after 7 days they're so improved they can go back to a 1 hour maintenance dose, or they can go to a 15-minute high-intensity interval training. That's cheap medicine, isn't it? What are they doing when they're walking all day? They're getting more oxygen into those brain cells, and we've got 1 trillion brain cells. And if every brain cell has oxygen, you're getting 18 more times more energy in that brain. Lack of sunshine can cause depression. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier when I was answering the questions, when the ultraviolet rays from the sun go through neurochemical pathways, they hit the pineal gland, and the pineal gland releases serotonin. And serotonin is called your mood hormone. If you want to feel good, go and sit in the sunshine. You've heard of the SAD disease? It's seasonal affective disorder. And it's in the northern countries of Europe. And they're blaming the fact that there's no sun. Do you know what the real reason is? They're on the SAD diet. Have you heard of the SAD diet? Standard American diet, or the Standard Australian diet? Those diets are very, very low in a fat called omega-3. And lack of omega-3, so lack of fat, can cause depression, and one of them is omega-3. And omega-3 is a very important fat that is used by brain cells to function properly. In fact, you look at the Eskimos. What do they eat a lot of? Blubber, seal, fish. Those fish are incredibly high in omega-3 because omega-3 grows in the cold northern countries. And when they eat enough of their native diet, they don't get depression. But in his book, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, Udo Rasmus, he cites a man who went and lived with the Eskimos, and after 3 months he became depressed and suicidal, and they had to whisk him out because he went and lived with the Eskimos, but he brought his sad diet with him, which is high sweet, high wheat, high meat, and virtually deficient in omega-3. So what are the sources of omega-3? Sources of omega-3 is walnuts. I think God's got a sense of humour because the nut that looks like the brain is the highest nut in omega-3. The other source of omega-3 is flaxseed, ground flaxseed. Grind it up, but don't buy it ground because it deteriorates very quickly. There is a use for your coffee grinder after all. And that's to whiz up those seeds. Whiz them up and pour them on your breakfast. And the chia seed, you know that little tiny dark seed? You can make some very nice chia puddings by just putting a bit of apple juice and coconut cream and stirring it, and it'll go like a soft jelly. Sometimes we do coconut cream and pineapple. That's also very nice. A delicious way to eat your chia seed. So your chia seeds are important, and your walnut and your flax to get your omega-3, and also they are an important part of getting your serotonin. That's what your brain needs to be able to produce it. Another type of fat that your brain loves is saturated fat, and the best saturated fat is the coconut. The brain is the fattiest organ in the body. You've heard of grey matter? Well, your grey matter are the cells. And white matter is the fatty sheath around it. Every cell in the body has a membrane around it which is 50% fat, except for the brain cell. The brain cell has a membrane around it that is 70% fat. Is this fat-free diet one of the reasons so many people are suffering from mental illness? Is it one of the reasons that 1,700 cases of Alzheimer's are being diagnosed in Australia every week? The current figures in Australia are 50% of Australians are suffering from, are or will some form of mental illness. Do you know, 10 years ago it was 45%? That's a little bit scary, isn't it? Is it this fat-free diet? There are fats that heal and there are fats that kill. Well, what are the healing fats? Fats as they came from the hand of the Creator. Basically your nuts and your seeds and your avocados and your coconut. And the two safest oils to buy, because they don't deteriorate near as easy, are your coconut oil and your olive oil. Now, I'm not suggesting you drink a whole cupful, but if you have Alzheimer's or dementia or Parkinson's or multiple sclerosis, you can supplement with the coconut oil for healing. You see, coconut is very high in something called medium chain fatty acid. And the liver converts medium chain fatty acids to ketones. And ketones are one of the brain's favourite fuels. And ketones are neurohealers and they're neuroprotectors. And Dr. Bruce Fife, in his book, he calls it the coconut ketogenic diet or the modified Atkins diet, where it's dropping your carbohydrates right down, high fibre diet, generous proteins. We showed you some beautiful ways to do legumes at lunchtime today. And then your healthy fats and your seeds, and then supplement with the coconut oil. Start with a teaspoon 3 times a day and build up to a tablespoon 3 times a day. In the book Stop Alzheimer's Now, Verse 5, he gives stories of people who've turned their Alzheimer's around on this diet. And it's because the liver loves converting the coconut oil, the saturated fat in coconut oil, to ketones. And the brain loves ketones as fuel. I'll show you another reason why it loves the fat as fuel. Glucose burns at 4 calories per gram. Fat burns at 9 calories per gram. And you can look in every anatomy and physiology book and you'll see that. Now, every weight loss book has this fact in psychedelic colours as the reason why you shouldn't eat the fat. Yeah? See a few nods. What they don't understand is what a calorie is. A calorie is a unit of energy. So if you want a high energy food, students, what do you eat? Fat. Did you taste that cheesecake at lunchtime made out of coconut cream? Yum. How nice. Coconut cream makes things taste delicious. So you can see why the brain loves fat, because fat gives it more than twice the units of energy than glucose does. Obviously, if you eat more units of energy than you can burn, you are forcing the body to store it. But when you eat breakfast like a king and lunch like a queen and tea like a pauper, then basically there's really nothing left to store. I have people email me 6 weeks after doing the program, and an average weight loss with many is 10 kilos lost in 6 weeks. And they say it's like I'm not even on a diet because I'm eating so well. You see, it's fat that gives the satiation feeling. And when our guests first come to Misty Mountain and we have a meal and maybe we've got baked potatoes, and I'll open the potato and I'll flood it with olive oil so the potato's no longer white but yellow, and then I'll put Celtic salt all over it, and you can see them looking at it thinking, and she's the health director. And by the end of the week they're joining me. See, fat doesn't make you fat. Isn't that good news? And it makes food taste nice. The fats that are dangerous are the altered fats. So there's your margarines. If you see that red FDA tick, beware. It doesn't mean it's all right. So fat is important for proper brain function. And the 2 fats the brain loves is the coconut for fuel and the omega-3 to keep a lovely suppleness to that cell and increase that electromagnetic field from cell to cell. Lack of fat can cause depression and lack of sleep. Now, sunshine causes a release of serotonin, and when you're sleeping between the hours of 9 and 2, you get a release of serotonin in those hours. So if you want to feel good, go to bed early and sit in the sun through the day and exercise, and make sure you've got lots of oxygen coming in. Lack of water. Our brain's a hydroelectric system. No hydro, no electricity. Many people have brains that do not work well because they're dehydrated. And yes, a cool day is the hardest day to drink water, isn't it? You just got to do it. Don't go there, just go to the good boss. It's time, just drink it. If you have a bit of salt before you drink it, I think it makes it a little easier. And just have half a glass, and then a bit later another half glass. You'll be amazed how much water you can get through by just doing that, bit by bit by bit, all through the day. And also, you're not running to the little house as much. One lady said, I don't drink water because I'm just running to the little house all the time. I said, try having the crystal of Celtic salt on your tongue, chew it up, have your water, have half a glass at a time, and then have another half glass. And then when you start your next glass, have another crystal of salt. Well, she got back to me. In fact, several people have. She said, "Oh, you're right. I'm not running to the little house all day. 500 mil in very soon. Guess what? 500 mil's going to have to come out. Do it bit by bit by bit. We need water. Our brain needs water. Lack of minerals can cause depression. There are two minerals that are particularly responsible for getting the message from cell to cell. One is calcium and the other is magnesium. You see, calcium causes constriction and magnesium causes relaxation. So it's like calcium, magnesium, calcium, magnesium. And the messages coming down this arm are basically going like that. Calcium, magnesium, calcium, magnesium. Anyway, I can't do it as quickly as it does. It's lightning speed. In fact, sometimes messages are travelling at 200 kilometres an hour. That's pretty fast. If we lack calcium and or magnesium, then the messages coming from cell to cell will be inhibited. Caffeine not only causes a chemical imbalance in the brain, which I described earlier, but it also leaches calcium and magnesium out of the body. So that has a double whammy effect in increasing or contributing to mental illness. When I was a psych nurse, the patients used to drink coffee and tea and Coke all day. How come? Well, guess who else is? All the staff, all the nurses and all the doctors. Well, how come they don't have depression? You'd be very surprised. You'd be very surprised at how many nurses and doctors are, and whenever I have nurses in the audience, they're the ones that are nodding their head the most vigorously. That they are suffering from the very diseases that they're treating. That's a bit scary, isn't it? Lack of vitamins can cause depression. The vitamin that is probably the most famous in treating mental illness is the vitamin Bs. Think of B vitamins as brain vitamins. Some of the B1, B2, B3s are responsible for the messages getting from cell to cell. They also are responsible for the little parts of the little energy cycles inside of every cell. But the vitamin B, the most famous, is vitamin B3, which is niacin, or called nicotinic acid. 1% of psychiatrists are treating mental illness with nutrition. Nice to know, isn't it? There are a few out there. And this is what they use. Sometimes they use up to 3,000 milligrams of nicotinic acid. That's 10,000 milligrams of nicotinic acid. That's 10 grams. That's a very high dose. It's not forever. It's just until the situation, the condition is brought under control. We have a DVD that our guests watch at night called Food Matters. I don't know if anyone's seen this DVD, Food Matters. Interesting DVD on the importance of food in health. And there's a story of a girl who was in a catatonic state, just sitting there looking at the wall. And her family heard about this nicotinic acid. And they put her on 11,000 milligrams. That's 11 grams. Do you know she snapped out of it, came off her medication? It was incredible. They told the doctor, and the doctor said, "This is very dangerous." So they took her off it, put her on a medication, and now she's just sitting at the wall. No one has ever died from a vitamin overdose. If they did, would we hear about it? I tell you what, it'd be headlines. But my daughter, her girlfriend, had a baby in hospital. It was her second baby. The baby had a little cold. They put the baby on antibiotics. The baby died. The baby died within a few hours. You never hear of that. In fact, there's no ramification for that. That's why I say if you have a baby in the hospital, keep that baby next to you and get out as quickly as possible. There are some excellent nurses and there are some excellent doctors. There are some excellent plumbers and there are some excellent builders and there are some excellent painters and there are some not so good painters and plumbers, yeah? You just got to do your research. Lack of progesterone can cause depression. I think it was Thursday night when we looked at hormones and we saw that progesterone's nickname is happy hormone. And there are many people, particularly women, who are suffering from depression because they were on the pill when they were younger, or they had exposure to chemicals, or they're having too much exposure to plastics. All of these things displace progesterone with estrogen. And estrogen, when it's high and progesterone's low, depression can happen. So how do you remedy that? Well, the person can go on the Anna's Wild Yam Cream, which little by little by little will boost up the progesterone. And then they implement these 8 laws of health, and then little by little they can ease off their antidepressants. I've seen it happen many times. That's good news, isn't it? In fact, sometimes this imbalance in hormones is the missing link in depression. Because remember, you can't just get depression. There is a reason for that. And I've met some people who've been through some shocking things in their life. I read a book called by Dave Pelzer. I don't know if you read that, The Lost Boy. It was the third worst case of child abuse in American history. And this child, well, I'm not even going to tell you what he went through, but it was just absolutely horrific. It's amazing that the child even survived. He used to come to school with new bruises on him all the time, and he came to school one day and his hands were burnt up to his elbows. His mother used to put him in acid. Anyway, he never went home after that. They took him and put him in a foster home. Do you know that guy never had depression? He found freedom through forgiving his mother. And when he found out that his grandmother used to lock his mother in the cupboard whenever she's naughty, sometimes for days, he began to understand, It didn't make what his mother did right, but he actually learnt to forgive. And he found freedom through forgiveness. And do you know that he got an award as Youth of the Year in America? This is, I think, back in about the 90s. Just incredible what this young man became, considering where he came from. And you read that book and you know what you think? I got no excuse. This is just incredible. And that's why I say it's not what's happened to you, it's what you do with it. And many people struggle with forgiveness because they think they've got to feel like it. That's why in my last lecture I showed you don't got to feel like it at all. How could you feel like it? Just do it. And remember, practice makes perfect, and practice makes permanent, and little by little it'll come in. So progesterone, that's an important link in conquering depression. And we're looking at what causes an imbalance: excess. What's the excess that can cause the chemical imbalance in the brain? Excess pain. If someone's in pain, the question mark has to be asked, why is this so? What can be done to relieve it? Hydrotherapy treatments, or maybe ginger poultices, or maybe high-dose turmeric, or maybe a trip to the osteopath to find out if the spine's aligned. One has to investigate as to why the pain is there to see what can be remedied. Also, excess food. This is a big thing today. People are just overloading the stomach and also putting food in all through the day, which irritates the stomach, irritates the nerves, and then the nerves all over the body get irritated. I know my first daughter, she's 40 now. When she was a little toddler, every time she'd get a little bit whingy or upset, I'd just give her half her apple and she'd be happy for a while. And then half an hour later, I'd give her a little bowl of sultanas. I just gave her all these bits and pieces. And then I read about how we've only got one stomach, and that stomach needs a rest between meals. And often children are irritable because they're getting food all the time. And so I stopped her. And whenever she'd get a little bit irritable, I'd distract her, or I'd just sit and cuddle her for a while and read her a book, and I found I only had to do that for 5 minutes and then she'd be happy. And then I found she stayed happy. And I realised that the very thing I was giving her to make her happy was actually making her more irritable. And so after that, I never gave my children anything to eat between meals. Now, I probably told you about Peter, who used to cry about 4 times through the meal because the banana would fall into the honey or the spoon would fall some. You know, sometimes he had to leave the room so much that he didn't hardly get any breakfast. And I used to think, I'm going to have trouble with that little one, and he was 3 or 4. So he'd come to me about 10 o'clock, Mum, I'm hungry. You know what you never do? You never say, well, you should have eaten your food, You know, they're not dumb. They're really smart kids, okay? And you lose them when you nag. I'd say, well, have a big drink of water. You'd have a big drink of water, that'd keep them happy for a while. Now it's 12 o'clock. We don't eat till 1:30. I'm hungry. All right, if you sit very still, you can have a half a glass of almond milk or soy milk, or if I actually have carrot, celery and apple juice made, that'll keep them going a bit longer. Now it's 1 o'clock. Mum, I'm hungry. All right, if you sit very still, you can have a carrot. How long does it take a 3-year-old to eat a carrot? A long, long time. And by the time he's halfway through it, lunch is ready. You see, if I give him something at midday, he's not going to eat his 1:30 meal, and then he's going to be hungry at, 3? Can you see? And, you know, it doesn't hurt to go a little bit of time without food. Stomach likes it. Excess food can cause depression. Excess stimulation. You know, we should allow ourselves times of peace. And today, this is a huge problem. Eye stimulation means brain stimulation. And many people, the television's always on, or the iPad, or the games, it's just go the whole time. And when the eyes are constantly being exposed to this, and then it all stops, guess what happens? The brain actually can get depressed. It's been overstimulated, and when it all stops, it can actually go into an experience of depression. That's why I say limit technology time. Limit your children's technology time and limit your technology time. The most dangerous time to allow your eyes to view technology is between these hours here. I must spend, an hour and a half, 2 hours a day on emails, but I always stop when I'm nearing these hours. Don't let your eyes have exposure to that in those hours. And also limit your time so that you have not got this overstimulation. I remember watching my he's not little now, he's very big now, but my son James, he's 39 now. I think he was about 8. And it was a rainy day, and he was sitting on the lounge, and he had a bottle top and an elastic band. And I timed him 2 hours. I don't know what the bottle top and the elastic band became, but they went down here and they went up there and they went round there. 2 hours. There he was, off by himself for 2 hours. Do you know, it's very, very good for children to know how to occupy themselves and to play their little games. It's very, very good for them. When children are overstimulated, they lose the art of being able to entertain themselves. It's a great art to take all through your life. Don't you agree? Poison. The brain can be poisoned. What poisons the brain? What poisons the brain? Mercury can poison the brain. Alcohol can poison the brain. Drugs can poison the brain. MSG can poison the brain. And there's one that I didn't put here, and that is chemicals. A lot of Vietnam veterans die early because of their exposure to chemicals. And often the 2 things they die from is suicide and cancer because of the damage done from the chemicals. All of these things can poison the brain and can contribute to depression. What also poisons the brain is violence. And a lot of young people today are watching violence on the games, violence on the videos. And our brain, as you saw in the laws of the mind, it adjusts and adapts to whatever we watch. It adjusts and adapts to whatever we're listening to. So be very cautious of what you're watching, because it's having an effect on your brain. What is it? Monkey see, monkey do? Negativity can poison the brain. Do you know what that means? You can have someone who is keeping, well, the 7 laws. They're exercising, they're going to bed early, they're not doing any of this, and yet they're always negative. Could you help me with this? No, I can't do it. No, I'm hopeless. Can we go out and say, no, look at the weather. No, everything. Have you noticed? Everything is negative. And do you remember what I said in the last lecture? When we entertain and cherish negativity, little thorns grow in between the dendrites. Negativity can poison the brain. Watching negativity, listening to negativity, and also allowing your brain to think negativity. One lady said, you don't understand, all my childhood I was told I was an idiot. Well, I met a man the other day, this was in America, and he was a real mover and a shaker man, you know, he managed big companies, and his wife was sick and he was there doing everything he could. He was about, 55. And somehow it came up his childhood. He said, my father beat me just about every day of my life. He said I was the youngest, I was the boy, the girls were fine, I was not. He told me I was an idiot. Every day I was told I was an idiot and I would come to nothing. And he said, and after a while the beatings did nothing to me. And I used to think to myself, I'm going to show you. And he said, and I did. I love it. And yet someone else can go through that and just their life is a mess. We don't choose what happens to us, but we choose what we do with it. And it's as simple as this. If you say it's great, guess what? It will be. And if you say it's terrible, guess what? It will be. We choose. We choose the way we see it. It's called cognitive behavioural therapy. It's like the lady, she said to me, I can't stand it. I wake up at 3 o'clock every morning. It drives me crazy. It's so annoying. I said, all right. And then she heard the lecture, how we get our hours of power between the hours of 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. I said, now, when you wake up at 3, you can go, fantastic. I've got my hours of power. I'll just have a little bit of a doze. You see, nothing's changed except the way she sees it. In fact, the research shows that cognitive behavioural therapy is the most effective way to improve insomnia. I was pregnant or breastfeeding non-stop for 14 years. I breastfed 3 months into every pregnancy. And I used to sleep with my babies. Also, as apparently not supposed to do that anymore, but I used to sleep with all my babies and they're all still alive. I used to think, you feed the baby like this, you're not going to roll on yourself. Sometimes I'd have a little one with a cold and a little baby that had a bit of a cold. I somehow used to fit them all into bed, but I might be up a bit in the night. If I could get 4 hours in one go, I was doing really well. And if I'd wake up, 4 hours, because guess what? When you wake up in the morning, there's the dishes and there's all the kids, and then I homeschooled and still all there. It's very faithful. It's still all there. And you know what I found? If I was a happy, calm mother, guess what? All the kids were. That's so much, makes life so much easier. In the early days, when I just had 4 children, and I had a baby, and I had a toddler, and I had a 4-year-old, and my little 6-year-old was just starting to learn school. And one day, everything, what do they call, belly up. And Emma just couldn't get the school, and I got my hand and I swept all the schoolwork onto the floor. Oh dear. Then the ramifications of that were terrible. I had upset. I never did that again. I learned a lot from that. Do you know what I do now? Just picture a few years later, I've got a baby and I've got a toddler and I've got a 4-year-old and I've got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old doing school. And sometimes it all happens at once. Every mother knows it. The 10-year-old can't get the long division. The 8-year-old can't get this spelling word. It all happens at once. And then the 4-year-old's pencil just broke. 6-year-old. And then the 4-year-old, she can't get the dress on her doll. And then the 2-year-old, the wheels come off his car and the baby needs a feed all at once. Well, do you know what I learned? You just tackle it one at a time. Because that situation where I just threw all the school, I had a house to clean up that. Plus I felt like an idiot. So I'd say, James, we'll look at the long division later. Can you put the wheel back on Peter's car? Emma, we'll put that aside. We'll look at it this afternoon. And can you fix up Julia's dress? And can you see, you just tackle it and then you sit and you feed the baby. And you know what I found? Everything happens at once, but 5 minutes later it's not. And as I showed you this morning, the highest function of the frontal lobe is foresight. Right? You've got to think ahead, and sometimes you think back and go, look at this. Do you know, laughter's such good medicine. I have rewired my brain to laugh when things go wrong. Dear, it's good. It is so good, because if you weren't laughing, what would you be doing? You'd be crying. That's right, that's right. You can rewire your brain because life should be good. And you know, our attitude is in our hands. No one else's hands. It's in our hands. And if everyone thinks you're an idiot, they're wrong. I've got a Father in heaven who loves me, who understands me. And there's a beautiful section in a little book called Steps to Christ, and I see it up the back. It says, take your wants, your cares, your sorrows, your joys, your fears to God. You cannot burden him and you cannot weary him. He who numbers the hairs of your head is not indifferent as to the needs of his children. The Lord is very pitiful and of a tender mercy. He heals the brokenhearted. He binds up their wounds. Take to him everything that perplexes the mind. Nothing is too great for him to bear, for he holds up worlds. He rules over the affairs of the universe. No chapter in our experience is too dark he cannot read. No perplexity too difficult that he cannot unravel. No calamity harass the soul. No anxiety challenge us. No joy cheer. No sincere prayer escape the lips of which our Heavenly Father is unmindful or takes no immediate notice. For he heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wounds. The relation that exists between God and the soul is as clear and succinct as if there was not another soul on the planet to share his watch care, not another soul for whom he gave his beloved Son to die. Isn't that beautiful? That's page 100 of that little book, Steps to Christ. That's where you put your mind. Whenever I see something beautiful, I memorise it. And it's all right, that took me about 6 months. But just like the piano players, they can just get on that piano and play. And that's why I can just stay that and stay it, because I've gone over it and over it and over it. But to store the mind with that is healing. Dr. Neil Nedley says, genetics cannot cause depression. Isn't that good news? Even if both your parents committed suicide, you need never go there. You see, genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. Genetics cannot cause depression. And tragedy, lifestyle tragedy cannot cause depression, because every heart has its sorrow. Every heart has suffered. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do with it. Dr. Neil Nedley says, lifestyle tragedy cannot cause depression. Genetics cannot cause depression, but on one or two of those, you throw in this list. You lack this list. You excess in this. You poison with this, and the scales are tipped. The scales are tipped. The good news is we have no say over tragedy in our life. We have no say over genetics, but we have total say over what we do. So if someone comes to me wanting help with depression, do you know what the first thing I do is get them to drink more water. Get them to go to bed early. Get them to start implementing an exercise program. Go on a plant-based diet and make your food taste wonderful with good healthy fats and the good salts. That's where you start. And when the frontal lobe starts to work well, because all of this is in place, we can start to have a little look at how this all happened. That's why we all should be private investigators, investigating why these things are so. Never do I suggest anyone stop their medication. There are some medications you can stop immediately. They're your blood thinners and they're your statin drugs. They can be stopped straight away. But antidepressants and medication for the mind, that has to be eased off. And it eases off once you implement this. You start to feel better and you start to ease off it. And I've seen many do that. Isn't that good news? So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, depression can be prevented. Alzheimer's can be prevented. Depression can be conquered. Alzheimer's can be conquered. Sometimes the Alzheimer's is so severe you may not get a total turnaround. But you know what? You do the best you can and you've got nothing to lose. Everyone's got nothing to lose by implementing these simple principles. In the little book, The Ministry of Healing, on page 44, it says this: the only hope of better things is the education of people in the right principles. Let the physicians teach the people that restorative power lies not in drugs, but in nature. You see, disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that arise because of a violation of the basic laws of health. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained, unhealthful conditions changed, wrong habits corrected, then nature is to be assisted in her efforts to expel impurities and re-establish right conditions back in the system. Pure air, sunlight, temperance, rest, exercise, proper diet, use of water, trust in divine power, these are the true remedies. Every person should have a knowledge of nature's remedial agencies and how to apply them. It is important both to understand the principles involved in the treatment of the sick and have a practical training to enable one rightly to use these principles. Nature's process of healing and upbuilding is gradual. Did everyone hear that? Nature's process of healing and upbuilding is gradual, and to the impatient it seems slow. The use of natural remedies requires an amount of care and effort that many are not prepared to give. The giving up of hurtful indulgences requires a sacrifice, but in the end it will be found that nature untrammeled does her work wisely and well. Those who persevere in obedience to her laws will reap the benefit in health of body and health of mind.
Wow. Barbara, just on behalf of our church community here and the Invercargill community and those who have come further afield as well, we want to give you a very big thank you. You know, throughout this week, our brains have been full of all this extra health information that many of us had no idea about. So we want to thank you for that. But also because it's been so encouraging for us, it shows us that there is a way that we can live that, you know, will help to heal ourselves and is the way that God wants us to live. So we've been encouraged, we've been inspired, and today we've been blessed, haven't we, folks? Yes. Yeah, so we want to give you a very big thank you, and we can't believe that you were able to come to Invercargill, but we're very glad you came, and until next time, we hope that things go well for you back in Australia at Misty Mountain, and with the other ventures that you have, we pray that God will bless you in those too. Good. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I never tire to share this wonderful information, knowing that we serve an amazing God, and He can do for you what He's done for me. Thank you.